Good evening. I'm always overjoyed in being here with you and to celebrate the work of journalists who do the real work, who tell the real stories. Donald Trump used the brutal street gang MS-13 as a symbol to stoke fear of immigrants and justify his harsh immigration policies. Trump portrays MS-13 as a threat to the average American, but Hannah Dreier of ProPublica showed us that the real targets of the gang's violence are Latino teenagers in Long Island. In 2018, in multiple outlets, and at great risk to herself, Hannah covered the government's bungled crackdown on MS-13 that has torn apart the lives of innocent Latino kids and left criminals on the streets. Hannah told the story of Henry, a young man who fled his homeland to escape MS-13 and cooperated with the FBI and local police to expose gang members on Long Island. Henry's FBI handler promised to help him get asylum, but then he broke his promise. Hannah's story may have saved Henry's life. Readers eventually raised more than $40,000 to help him go into hiding in Europe. Hannah told us about Carlotta Moran, heartbreaking search for her son Miguel, who was killed by MS-13 gang members in a wooded area known as the Killing Fields. Hannah exposed the indifference and incompetence of local police who slow-walked the investigation into Miguel's abduction and assumed that Miguel, who must have been a gang member himself, just because he was Latino. And Hannah introduced us to Alex, an asylum seeker who was suspended and deported for a classroom doodle that was mistaken for gang symbol. Hannah's reporting sparked numerous reforms in the investigations. The Department of Homeland Security opened a civil rights probe into Henry's case, and ICE ended a practice that had jeopardized the safety of informants. Long Island police began investigating the mishandling of MS-13 murders and the detectives' slow response to the disappearance of Miguel Moran. Suffolk County Police launched a campaign to recruit more Spanish-speaking officers. Hannah showed us the truth behind the propaganda. And so it is my great pleasure to present the 2019 Hillman Prize for Magazine Journalism to Hannah Dreier.
Thank you, Danny Glover. It's very surreal. I'm just so inspired to be here tonight with all of these incredible honorees, amazing judges. Thank you to the Hillman Foundation for fostering this kind of complex, time-consuming reporting on some of the most vulnerable people in this country. This is one of those projects that started as a sort of okay idea in the office. Trump had just given a major speech on Long Island using MS-13's violence there to justify tougher immigration policies. And I thought that I would go out and maybe write a story about how Trump was exaggerating the risks posed by this gang. But when I got on the ground, I started talking to the immigrants who live on Long Island, and they started telling me these outrageous stories about students deported for no reason, informants sold out by their handlers, and MS-13 murder victims dismissed as runaways. And I realized that there was a different story here, a story about how police bias and anti-immigration policies were undermining the efforts to combat a brutal gang that was preying on Latino teenagers. As soon as I started reporting these stories, I started having nightmares. Everybody who worked on these stories eventually had nightmares, including the person who lawyered them. And I just wanted to tell the story in a way that would make people pay attention. I feel like criminal justice reporting and immigration reporting are so polarizing right now. and I wanted to really try to get through to readers with this one. And for me, the answer was what it always is, which is to go to a specific human story. So I started the series not with the sweeping overview that Danny Glover just gave you guys, but with the most intimate thing possible, with the story of a 17-year-old named Henry who was sitting in his Long Island classroom writing an essay for his teacher about how he'd been forced to kill someone for MS-13 when he was a child in El Salvador. And now he was scared that the gang was going to make him kill again on Long Island. I talked about how Henry decided to become an FBI informant, how hopeful he was that he was going to be able to start again and that his teachers and law enforcement were going to protect him, and then how horrified he was when the FBI turned him over to ICE and he was locked up with the same killers he'd been informing on. Awards are very weird. It's very strange to win such an important and humbling award for stories that are so full of pain. And these are discouraging times in a lot of ways for journalists and for people who care about immigration and immigrants. But I think there's still a lot of capacity for empathy out there. After these stories ran, people wrote in to me to say that they now saw asylum seekers in a new way. One woman wrote that for the first time she felt compassion for an illegal alien. I feel so grateful to the brave and resilient protagonists of these pieces for trusting me with their stories. Henry, Carlota, and Alex, they really risked their lives to get these stories out there. And I'm also grateful to ProPublica's partners who made sure that these stories were told right. That's the New York Times Magazine, New York Magazine, This American Life, and also Newsday out on Long Island. And there's so much talent in this room. I just want to encourage everyone to keep going and not to despair. I feel really strongly that there are brighter times ahead for this country and for immigrants in America. Thank you.